is a spiritual deity. Freedom and liberty and justice shall fight for you. When you fight for freedom with all your soul, take it from me. This is Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB, the voice of the nation, the voice.
And here is a special announcement from the leadership of Biafra government in exile. This is BCB.
For a people who survived brutal pogroms and a devastating genocidal civil war, we must always be circumspect in relation to the way we go about our agitation for freedom and liberty. In Biafra Government in Exile, we advocate for non-violent agitation for freedom. Freedom means an independent state of Biafra living side by side with Nigeria and her other neighbors, peacefully and with secure borders. Freedom also means a politically and economically free Biafra, with Biafrans free to unleash their potentials in business, in trade, in production and research, in medical science, in automobile production, in space technology, and many more. It's important to note and to understand that for every Biafran, with that I mean everyone from the territory and area of land declared as Biafra on May 30, 1967, the old eastern region of Nigeria, the ancestral homeland of the Igbo, the Ijaw, Efik, Ibibio, and many other identifiable tribes within the old eastern region, who believe that Biafra should be free and exist as an independent state outside Nigeria. There are others who don't. I therefore vehemently argue that those who don't are well within their right not to do so, and must be respected and not vilified or abused. The present-day agitation for the restoration of the sovereign state of Biafra through a non-violence means should therefore recognize the need to be tolerant in the process of providing superior arguments in favor of self-determination, as well as displaying positive attitude and temperament with the view to attract others on the opposite side of the divide onto our own side of the divide. This, in my view, is the practical demonstration of what we mean when we say the agitation for the restoration of the sovereign state of Biafra is noble and a holy cause. And those who partake in it, whether you are at home or in diaspora, must indeed do so in spirit and in truth. In addition, this agitation is also significantly, predominantly, an intellectual endeavor, more or less, rather than a haphazard, senseless, violent route by a few misguided young people who lack the understanding of what is required for such a Herculean task, and are therefore being used by gullible people who are only interested in how to benefit from the struggle. I am confident, however, that time will expose those with selfish intentions and hidden agenda of any kind, and who are, most regrettably, causing harm and additional pain and suffering on our own people. Nigeria as presently constituted cannot stand. That is a fact. Nigeria is a failed state by every unit of measurement. Before things even got to this irredeemable state, the agitation for Biafra had commenced back in the late 90s with the emergence of the movement for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, MASOB. And then the proliferation of pro-Biafra groups some years after. This struggle is undoubtedly the resistance against marginalization, unfairness being meted out against Biafrans within the Nigerian state, exploitation of our resources without adequate investment and development in the land, as well as the unwritten law that no Igbo man would be allowed to be president of Nigeria. The evidence is overwhelming just from the last presidential election. It was clear Igbos are not accepted in Nigeria and would never be allowed to occupy the highest office. There's no problem with that. No issues at all. If you don't want Igbos to occupy the highest office of the land, you must then be prepared to let them go. But then, yes, Igbos must be allowed their right to self-determination. You can't have it both ways. You can't be poor and be a witch at the same time. Which is what Nigerian people are trying to be. The fight for the restoration of the sovereign state of Biafra is a fight for fairness, equity, and justice. That is what it is, and that is why we will continue to agitate. If we cannot get fairness, equity, and justice in Nigeria, and it's clear as daylight that we cannot, from the lack of investments in airports, in seaports, in roads, to the lopsided political structure and appointments, quota system, police brutality and exploitation, and many more. There is no fair play, as Igbos are continuously treated as conquered people, and therefore not welcomed in Nigeria. Yet, they are not allowed to go their separate ways. Surely, the question of Biafra independence must be put to the people of Biafra in a referendum or a plebiscite. This is a democratic way to settle political questions. Globally acceptable. It's happened in so many places. It's even happened in Nigeria. Giving the people the opportunity to make the decision themselves, whether or not they want to live or remain as part of Nigeria. The Igbo are known to be one of the oldest democracies in the world, if not the oldest. The traditional and customary systems that can be traced back thousands of years indicate that the Igbo have always settled issues in a democratic way, through the meetings of the Omunna, the Eze in council, autonomous communities, town and market unions, each making decisions and electing their own leadership through free and fair voting systems. The Igbo is not known to settle political and social issues through violence. The events leading to the Nigeria-Biafra War give credence to this fact. Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu sought every means possible through dialogue to resolve the issues of the killing of our people in the north. He went as far as reaching agreement with Gowon in Aburi in Ghana. on the way forward. He then asked Igbos to go back to the north, assuring them of their safety. But this was not to be, as thousands more were slaughtered again and again. The war itself was an act of self-defense by Biafra, because it's only a tree that was told that it will be cut down and it will remain in the same spot and do nothing about it. But a human being, a people, an ethnic race will definitely react when threatened and or attacked by an aggressive force like the Nigerian army, backed to the hilt by the British arms and ammunition, mortars, and other heavy weapons, as well as arms, equipment, and personnel from Egypt and other Arab nations. The small, young nation of Biafra had no option but to defend herself against these mighty forces that sought to annihilate her. A genocide in all intent and purposes. Nigeria and her British master wanted Biafra's land, resources, but not her people. The British openly and visibly loathed Biafrans, especially Igbos, because they were not subservient like the Hausa Fulani, and to some extent the Yorubas as well. Therefore, for the British, Biafra must be defeated and subdued at all costs, forced back into the contraption and subjugated against her will. But they underestimated the strength in the human spirit, which the Biafrans possessed in abundance. Even though Biafra lost the war, Biafra did not die to the war. It was inevitable that the remnants of Biafra who survived the genocidal war will one day rise again and continue the fight for freedom and liberty. They will, most certainly too, in the fullness of time, seek justice. This present struggle will have to be focused and strategic to make any impact, to make any progress. Deploying every intellect, wisdom, and understanding in the areas of peaceful and diplomatic processes within local and international laws and conventions, one of which is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples to Self-Determination. Underpinning BGIE's strategic plan for Biafra self-determination are the 4 pillars that indigenous peoples seeking self-determination need to establish. These pillars are: number 1, territory. You have to have a defined territory to understand the area for which you are seeking control. Population, number 2. How many are you in that territory? You need to know the number of people roughly in that territory. Number 3, government. You have to have an established government. And number 4, your government must have the ability to engage with other nation states. In conjunction with the Biafra Charter of 2007, yes, a charter existed. And nobody should deceive you that they started another version of a government in exile as rogue people start to manipulate others and copy what they don't know how it came about. There's a charter that was developed by BGIE in 2007. This plan seeks to drive the struggle through legal, diplomatic, and democratic roadmap to freedom, liberty, and self-determination. It's a long, hard road. There are no easy ways. Anybody that is telling us that there's an easy way, that they can fight their way through violence and all that, is actually being used by the Nigerian government, or they don't know exactly what they're talking about, or they're deceiving people and collecting money from people, and it will end up the same way the others have ended up. And so our people need to be careful. We need to think carefully what we are doing, whether you're in the United States, or in Europe, or in Africa, or in Asia, or in the homeland. You must not allow yourself to be used. People can say things in social media, on radio, and whatever medium they have available. But God has given us the spirit of sound mind to be able to decipher what is truth and what are lies. At the moment, there are so much lies. People are saying things that you can easily believe because they want you to keep making financial contributions to them to fund their lavish lifestyle. It's time for all of us to be careful and wake up. The journey is going to be long, and there will be no easy ways. There'll be hard discussions, hard negotiations, hard preparations, without which we will not be able to break through. But we know that God has given us everything that it takes for us to break through these diplomatic and democratic principles and navigate ourselves into a situation of freedom and liberty for our people. And the big question is, why Biafra? And why not remain in Nigeria and fight for justice and fair play? This is a very big question. And I want to argue that the onus is on pro-Biafra elements to lay out in clear and simple terms, unequivocal, the reasons for a free, independent nation of Biafra. Apart from the political reasons that are very crystal clear, which was even magnified by the last presidential election and the fallouts of it. The economic argument is even more glaring and more persuasive. And think about this. From around the late 1950s to about 1964-65, the Eastern region witnessed astronomical growth driven by massive industrialization, manufacturing, and agricultural programs, including palm oil, automobile, livestock, textile, limestone, coal, and many more. The deliberate establishment of top-notch educational institutions like UNN ensured that the highly skilled labor force required for this revolution was available. The result was that the region grew faster than China, than Singapore, Malaysia, and so many other European countries. If our fathers could do this then, with the likes of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Dr. Michael Okpala, Akanu Ibiam, K. Mbadiwe, and many others, then this generation can do it, and even more, if the environment of freedom, liberty, equity, and justice is created. I have come to the conclusion, therefore, and many others have come to the same conclusion too, that the only situation that will create that peaceful, competitive environment is the emergence of an independent, safe, and secure state of Biafra. The issue of individual responsibility and accountability becomes very critical. And I would like to end by dwelling very briefly on this episode. Each one of us, whether you're at home or you are in exile, have a role to play. In very simple terms, that role, no matter how little or how big, must be sincere as well as honest sacrifice. Because no sacrifice is too big for freedom and liberty. It's got to start with the man you see in the mirror. If you as an individual will think carefully about the events of the last few years, especially the last few months, you will come to the same conclusion that Biafra is not Nigeria and Biafrans are not accepted in Nigeria. If you do, then ask yourself this question: what can I do now to contribute to the freedom and liberty of my people? Thank you and God bless you. And may God bless our nation, Biafra.
This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Fellow Biafrans, this is Rosama, and this is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra. We use this opportunity to pause and remember the Asaba massacre of 1967. In early October, between October 5th and 7th, 1967, Nigerian government soldiers in pursuit of Biafran troops entered the town of Asaba on the southwestern banks of the River Niger in present-day Delta State and massacred all male residents over the age of 10. The residents of the community had come out to the town square in their traditional ceremonial white outfits, chanting, "One Nigeria, one Nigeria," to welcome the soldiers. They had expected peace. Instead, the soldiers separated the men and boys from women and young children and shot all males over the age of 10. By the end of the chaos, between 500 to 700 townspeople were killed, some reports state. Others claim that the number is much higher, ranging close to 2,000. In his journal entry for that day, Major General Odumegwu Ojukwu writes that more than 1,000 Biafrans had been killed by Nigerian soldiers in the town of Asaba. Federal troops occupied Asaba for months, raping women and girls, pillaging the community, and forcibly marrying many women and girls as war trophies. What is a fact is that the people of Asaba had experienced mass atrocity. Worst of all, survivors buried their dead in mass graves where they had been killed. There were no individual burials for anyone, as was customary. The young were buried with the elderly, the poor with the titled men and elders. For the people of Asaba, this act was an abomination, not only because the dead were not given a befitting burial, but also because more than half a century later, the scar of the atrocity remains a reminder of the larger issue of Nigeria's refusal to resolve the question of Biafra. The residents of Asaba were massacred because the Nigerian government defined them as Biafrans, as Igbo, and therefore subject to extermination. This was, and still is, genocide, and would become a model for other cases of Nigeria's acts of atrocity across Biafra throughout the war. While the Nigerian government has not offered an apology, at least a reasonable one, for the Asaba massacre or similar massacres in Biafra during the war, and has not made any attempts to address the denial of human rights for Biafrans decades later. General Yakubu Gowon would General Yakubu Gowon would apologize for the massacre, claiming that he was unaware of the extent of the harm done. Hear him in his own words, quote, "It came to me as a shock when I came to know about the unfortunate happenings that happened to the sons and daughters of this state, especially of this place, of this domain. I felt very touched, and honestly, I ask for forgiveness, being the one who was in charge that time. Certainly, it is not something that I would have approved of in whatever. I was made ignorant of it, I think, until it appeared in the papers. A young man wrote a book at that time," unquote. Like Gowon, many people in Nigeria and across the world are unaware of this atrocity. Many remain unaware or refuse to acknowledge the atrocity Biafrans continue to experience today. If your question is, why return to this massacre each year? Or if you're one of the ones who says, why not just forget about it? It's done. It happened a long time ago. We say it is because we do not wish to forget. That's why we return to this massacre each year. We memorialize it because we want to remember so that we may not experience another atrocity such as this. It is because we must tell our story in our own words so that the world may know us and so that the next generation will know their history and will remember their past. It is because the atrocity continues. It is because until Nigeria resolves the question of Biafra and stops atrocities such as this that have continued to plague us, we must not stop talking about it. We must remember. I am Rosama, and I am passing this story on to you that you may tell it. You must tell the story of Asaba Massacre, for it too is the story of Biafra. Thank you for listening to us today. Join us next time for news, cultural, and educational programs. This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Hail to Biafra, consecrated nation. O Fatherland, this people's holy pledge, defending thee shall be our dedication. shall remain, but those who die immersed, then shall our trumpets peal the glorious song of victory. We score, oh my and wrong. Oh God, protect us from the heathen pitfall. Guide all our movements, lest we go astray. Give us the strength to heed the hill that is hard, to give and not to count the cost each day. Bless those who rule, to serve we resolute.